To be honest, I don't really watch shows much anymore. In this day and age, I mostly just mind-numbingly scroll through YouTube like Google has programmed me to. But back when I was more actively watching shows, I had a pretty good list of amazing animated shows that I could go to. Even though they may not have been the most common, in the past I remember it was never really too hard to find a well-made and creative animated series here and there. But as time went on, I felt like these amazing shows I used to find and enjoy became a lot more scarce in the ever-increasing vastness of mediocre content that has arisen. To be fair, I could chalk that up to nostalgia and the fact that I don't really actively look for shows to watch anymore, but I feel like compared to say a decade ago, finding well-made, visually distinct, and creative shows is getting harder. And as a result, finding a really promising show is that much more of an impactful event nowadays. So you can imagine my surprise and delight when I caught wind that Dead Cells is getting a 10-episode long animated series in 2024, animated by the studio behind their gameplay trailers. Just open the door and let that sink in. Dead Cells gameplay trailers, some of the best works of short animation I have ever seen, are getting their own fully fledged show. Now, I'm not going to lie, I really had to dig into this, because this was kind of entirely out of left field. Sure, a lot of people have praised animation in these gameplay trailers as literally looking like it came from an animated series, but trailers have been coming out for almost 5 years now, and as far as I know, there hasn't been any real talk of an animated series. It's like having a good sleep schedule. Everyone keeps talking about how amazing that would be, but of course we're not gonna actually have that or something. It was just one of those wonders we only really jokingly talked about. Something that of course would have been the best thing since Slice Airhead Extremes, but realistically isn't something that makes sense to happen. What with Dead Cells being a pretty niche game made by a smaller studio whose resources couldn't really be stretched too thin with something like an entire animated series. That is, until... they friggin' did it. So, Dead Cells animated series. As a quick overview of what we know, this series is getting a confirmed 10 episodes, each roughly 7 minutes long, and will be co-produced by Bobby Pills, the team behind the Dead Cells animated trailers, and ADN, a popular French anime streaming service. Now I can't really speak for ADN, but oh boy, am I excited that Bobby Pills is producing this. For those of you who don't know, the Dead Cells animated trailers are some of the most stylistic, funny, charming, and just creative pieces of work I have ever seen for a freaking game trailer. That's like if Gordon Ramsay came to my 6th grade birthday party and prepared some gourmet Japanese Wagyu seasoned with a GTX 4090. It's really incredible, the work the studio did with a game trailer, something that isn't usually valued for its animation quality. I'm not really an animation expert, so it's hard to pinpoint exactly why, but something about the visuals, the aesthetic, the humor, the trailers just really stand out in comparison to other animated trailers in their own awesome way. And I think it so 110% would work in an animated show. Now, I can't say that with absolute certainty, but the style of the trailers is one that looks like it just fits right into an animated show, you know? Like there are some incredible gameplay trailers out there, don't get me wrong, but not so many feel like they could be translated so seamlessly into an actual show as the Dead Cells trailers do. It really feels like the trailers are just shorts of a pre-existing larger animated work. And again, I really don't know why, it could be the style, the jokes, the fluidity, the expression, a combination of those, but somehow Bobby Pills really nailed the hammer on the head with getting something that just looks like a show. But enough fanboying and back to the show itself. As for the plot, it seems like it's going to be tied to the plot of the Dead Cells game. According to Motion Twin, the developer for Dead Cells and the project header for the animated series, the story takes place on a strange island that has been racked by a mysterious disease causing the dead to be mutated and reanimated into murderous monsters. Most of the island has been infected, including the king and his guard, leading to absolute chaos amongst the island's inhabitants. However, prophecies of a flame-headed hero arise, declaring that he will kill the king and end the malaise, and the rumors do indeed turn out to be true. Now, quick note before we continue, I really don't know the lore of Dead Cells that well, as I only recently have started playing the game, so I did a bit of research for this video, but I could very well get some stuff wrong, and for that I apologize. You may flame me in the comments. But anyway, it seems like based on what Motion Twin has said the show will be about, it lines up roughly with the broad scope of what the Dead Cells game lore is also about. Of course, though, I suspect there will be many differences in the show's plot versus the game's plot. For one, we will probably spend a lot more time focusing on the Beheaded and other Dead Cells characters than the game does, and take the pace of the story a lot slower than in-game. Instead of zooming through areas and picking up tidbits of lore as you progress in-game, we will probably be more eased into the story and get a deeper detailed look into the world of Dead Cells and its inhabitants. If this is the direction they take, I'm really interested in where the producers go with the story, as while the game already does have a good bit of confirmed lore about the world and its characters and history, a lot is left up to interpretation by the player, so there's tons of avenues the show has to explore and define. Life before the malaise, who the Beheaded is, how the plague first started spreading, all these things and more aren't objectively 100% defined by the game. so there's a lot of open story to mold into plot, assuming they even stick with pre-existing lore. Heck, they could go totally off rails and make the story centered around the vast other lesser-known characters in the Dead Cells universe, the intriguing places the island holds, or the history of the island and its time before the disease. Again, yes, the game does go into pretty good detail about the world of Dead Cells, but so many more details and stories can be elaborated on in the show compared to the game, because it isn't hindered by having to fit in runtime with gameplay, which is the main focus of the game. It can instead create its own story to take at its own pace, and portray more content to the viewer because it doesn't have to be formatted to be seen with gameplay. There is definitely a large canvas to work with here, and a lot of routes the show can go, and considering the devs of Dead Cells themselves will be heading the project, I can only assume that regardless of what we get, it will be a pretty canon-respective story that might make a whole new interpretation of the game's lore that no one has thought of before. Of course, it is possible that the show doesn't go too deep into the lore of the game and really just focuses on surface-level interactions of Dead Cells characters and the antics they get into or something. The trailers always were a bit more on the lighthearted surface side. They definitely expressed a wide range of emotions, but overall they were very short, so the vibe of them was more fast-paced, actiony, and humorous. But considering there's a confirmed 10 entire episodes, I'm pretty sure that with a time frame like that, we are going to get at least a decent chunk of the lore pretty well looked into in these episodes. Which, again, sounds awesome. I really want to see what they come up with. Sure, there may be some broad, surface-level things going on from episode to episode, but 10 episodes is a decent amount of time to build up a good story and really dig into the Dead Cells lore. But, on that note of longevity, I do have to wonder exactly how much of the Dead Cells story they're going to try and fit into the series. If these 10 episodes are the only 10 episodes they are making ever, which I'm not sure at the moment if that's the case or not, I really have to wonder how they are going to fit a story as vast and expounding as Dead Cells and maybe even its DLC without rushing through or condensing it. It takes possibly hundreds of hours of gameplay to really encapsulate the full lore of Dead Cells. I mean, heck, I'm not even close to unwrapping the story myself, and I've got an okay amount of time put in. And while gaming is a very inefficient method of storytelling as compared to a written show, it seems like a daunting task to take on in just 70 minutes of content. I know how I just said 10 entire episodes is plenty enough time to warrant a good, connected, and somewhat deep story, and I don't want to doubt Motion Twin or Bobby Pills or ADN's capabilities, but I know shows that have singular episodes that are 70 minutes long, and that just introduces the characters. And then the show goes on to have 3 more seasons. So I can't imagine what Dead Cells is going to be able to do with its time frame. I feel like shows with a quote good runtime usually contain hours upon hours of content, and even then are often annoyingly cut short. So I do have to ponder if Dead Cells Animated will be cutting things out from the lore, altering some aspects for time, localizing the story to a certain part of the Dead Cells story, just going off rails into a very unprecedented story, strictly staying on a surface level, different plot, episode to episode theme, or if these 10 episodes are not the only ones we are supposed to get, and the success of the series will dictate future planned episodes. I don't know show logistics and how they get greenlit and the process behind that, but I do think that usually shows are announced without their entire lineup of content set, so that could be the case here, and Motion Twin only has 10 episodes greenlit as of now, and will wait on announcing future episodes until another season is greenlit. I personally hope more episodes will be coming in the future myself. I know that's a lot to ask of a studio the size of Motion Twin while they are actively working on updating Dead Cells and working on other projects, but I really want them and Bobby Pills to be able to express everything they want in this animated series, and not have to cut or alter things they don't want to just because of a time constraint. I know this isn't a perfect world, and that reality is often present in the animation market, but gosh darn it, I just really am excited about the potential this show has on giving an interpretation of the Dead Cells lore with incredible graphics and creative writing. And I don't want it cut short, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Beyond the questionable longevity of the show, one more big question I had about it is what the tone will be. Now I know I just talked a lot about my theories on the plot, but tone and plot are two correlated but still different things, and I have to wonder what exactly the tone of the show will be. Most of the Dead Cells game trailers are very physical and more on the lighthearted side, with lots of visual gags and other cartoonish antics. Not to say they are entirely just a surface level joke, but they certainly aren't usually very morbid or dark or mysterious. So will the tone of the show, being from the creators of the gameplay trailers, reflect that, or will it be different? This was something I heard people talking about pertaining to the show, how the trailers play out in a manner that may get stale after 10 episodes and hinder the dynamic range the show can have when it needs to get more serious, if that's a thing it does. Personally, I assume Bobby Pills and Motion Twin are more than capable of making a show with a more serious tone when that's what they want to do. Bobby Pills already has experience in animation and Motion Twin in game development, both of which require a good grasp of the importance of tone. The larger question to me is if they want a show that is darker compared to the trailers, or something close to that. To that I can't say much. The trailer certainly wasn't the most jolly, but it wasn't a lot to go off of. But I do hope the show isn't exactly like the trailers in regards to its pacing and tone. The plot of Dead Cells certainly isn't the most lighthearted, and I think in order for the show to accurately represent that, it would probably need to have a more brood and serious tone. Not that it always has to be like that, I hope it isn't, but in order to develop the story of Dead Cells, the show will certainly be tackling some serious problems and have to respond accordingly. I don't know, I really can't elaborate much more on this was just more of a question I had floating around, but I thought it would be an interesting tidbit to give y'all to ponder on. And as one last point about the show, I know I'm getting off tracks here, but I have one more big question. I do wonder if there will be voiced characters. None of the gameplay trailers had voices. Heck, even the game itself just has text and no audibly voiced actual dialogue. So I actually am kind of really intrigued about how Dead Cells with voices would go, or if they won't have voices at all. Personally, I feel like shows are very much benefited by character voicing. Voice acting can make or break stuff for me in almost any media with it, but it definitely is possible to have good, deep, and creative shows with no voices at all. I don't really know. I would personally like to see voices because 1, I have some voices in my head when I read Dead Cells dialogue for characters and I want to see if I'm accurate or not. And more importantly 2, I feel like voices are just such an integral part of expression in animation. But maybe I will be wowed by how expressive the Dead Cells animation can be with no voices. I have no idea, but regardless of that, regardless of how the plot will go or how they will format the story or if there's more episodes or if this is it, I am very, very excited and cannot wait to see this show come to fruition, and perhaps even inspire some other roguelikes to get shows of their own, maybe. Looking at you, Risk of Rain 2. Please. But what do you think, you wonderful viewers, you? Does this Dead Cells show look promising? What will the plot cover? Is 10 episodes enough? And is it possible that mayhaps this could be the start of more roguelikes getting an animated show? Please let me know in the comments. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go read through some more Dead Cells dialogue to prepare myself for the painful realization that I am doing the voices completely wrong. See ya.